You are kneeling in front of a cooking fire just after dawn. The wood you gathered yesterday is stacked beside you. The pot is clay, blackened from years of use, balanced on 3 stones. Inside it, water is beginning to heat. You will cook the morning meal, then the evening meal, and you will do this every day without fail, because if you do not cook, your family does not eat. There is no stove to turn on, no gas line, no switch. There is fire, and fire requires wood, and wood requires labor. The fire must be built correctly, or it will consume too much fuel. It must be tended, or it will go out. It must be controlled, or it will burn the food. This is not simple. This is a skill that takes years to learn and a lifetime to practice. Get it wrong and you waste fuel you cannot replace. You burn food your family needs. You fill your home with smoke that damages lungs and eyes. So you do not get it wrong. You learn to do it right. For thousands of years, across the entire continent of Africa, people cooked over open fires using wood, charcoal, dried dung, or crop residue as fuel. They had no alternatives. The fuel had to be gathered or made. The fire had to be built and managed. The cooking had to happen regardless of weather, regardless of fuel availability, regardless of how tired you were. It was not optional. It was survival. And the methods developed to do this efficiently, to conserve fuel, to produce edible food day after day, were as essential as knowing how to grow crops or find water. Start with the fuel itself, because without fuel there is no fire, and without fire there is no cooked food. In regions with trees, wood is the primary fuel. But not all wood burns the same. Softwoods burn fast and hot, but do not last. They produce more smoke. Hardwoods burn slower, hotter, and produce coals that hold heat for hours. A woman gathering firewood knows which trees to take from. She knows which fallen branches are dry enough to burn, and which are still green and will only smoke. She knows how much wood her household needs for a day, for a week. She carries this knowledge in her body, in the weight of the bundle on her head, in the hours it takes to walk to where the wood is and back. Gathering firewood is labor. It is often the work of women and children. In some regions, it takes hours every day. You walk to the forest or the bush. You search for dead wood because cutting live trees depletes the resource and green wood does not burn well. You break branches to a manageable size. You bundle them and carry them back, sometimes several miles. The bundle can weigh 30 or 40 pounds. You carry it on your head to keep your hands free and to distribute the weight. This is done daily or every few days, depending on how much wood you can carry and how much your household uses. In areas where trees are scarce, where the land has been cleared or where the climate does not support forests, fuel is harder to find. Crop residue becomes important. Maize stalks, millet stems, dried grass. These burn, but they burn quickly. They do not produce lasting coals. Cooking with crop residue requires more constant feeding of the fire and more attention. Dried animal dung is another fuel source. Cattle dung, goat dung, collected and dried in the sun until it is hard and light. It burns slowly and produces steady heat, but the smoke has a distinct smell and produces less heat than wood. Where wood is unavailable, dung is what you use. You do not have the luxury of preference. Charcoal is different. Charcoal is wood that has been burned in a low oxygen environment until it becomes almost pure carbon. It burns hotter and cleaner than raw wood. It produces less smoke. It is lighter and easier to transport. But making charcoal requires skill and labor. Wood is stacked in a mound, covered with soil or clay to restrict airflow, and burns slowly for days. The process must be controlled carefully. Too much air in the wood burns to ash. Too little, and it does not convert. When done correctly, you are left with charcoal that burns efficiently. Charcoal is often sold in markets. People who do not have time or skill to make it buy it, but it costs money. For those who can make it, it is a way to turn abundant wood into a more efficient fuel. For those who cannot, it is an expense. The fire itself is built with intention. You do not simply pile wood and light it. You start with kindling. Small, dry twigs and grass. These catch easily from a spark or ember. The kindling is arranged loosely so air can flow through it. Fire needs oxygen. Dense packing smothers it. Once the kindling is burning, you add slightly larger sticks. Then, larger pieces. You build the fire in stages, each stage catching from the one below. Rushing this process wastes matches or effort if you are making fire by friction or with flint and steel. Once the fire is established, it is managed for efficiency. A large fire is wasteful. It consumes fuel quickly and produces more heat than needed. A small fire, carefully fed, can cook a meal using a fraction of the wood. 3 stones are placed in a triangle. The pot sits on top. The stones hold the pot stable and create a space underneath where the fire burns. The opening between the stones allows you to feed wood into the fire from one side. The stones concentrate the heat upward into the pot, rather than letting it spread outward and dissipate. Some households use a clay stove instead of open stones. A small structure, dome-shaped or cylindrical, with an opening at the bottom for fuel and a top where the pot sits. The stove directs heat more efficiently than open stones. Less fuel is needed for the same cooking result. Building a clay stove requires knowledge of how to shape the clay, how thick to make the walls, where to place the air intake and exhaust. A well-made stove lasts for years. A poorly made one cracks and falls apart. Stoves are often built by women who have learned the technique from their mothers or from other women in the community. The fire is not kept burning all day. It is lit when needed for cooking, then allowed to die down to coals. Coals can be kept alive for hours with minimal fuel. A small stick added occasionally keeps them glowing. When it is time to cook again, you blow on the coals, add kindling, and the fire comes back to life. This conserves fuel. Keeping a large fire burning continuously when you are not using it is wasteful. Fuel is too valuable to waste. Cooking happens in stages. Water is boiled for porridge or tea. Grains are added and stirred. Stews are prepared. Vegetables are cooked. Each task requires different heat. Boiling needs sustained heat. Simmering needs less. A cook learns to adjust the fire by adding or removing fuel, by controlling airflow, by moving the pot closer to or farther from the flames. This is not written down, it is felt. You know by looking at the fire, by feeling the heat radiating from it, by listening to the sound of the boiling pot, whether the heat is right. Pots are made from clay or metal. Clay pots are traditional, fragile, but they distribute heat evenly and are good for slow cooking. Metal pots, where available, are more durable but can develop hotspots that burn food if the fire is too intense. Both require careful handling. A clay pot can crack if subjected to sudden temperature changes. A metal pot can warp. The pots are blackened from smoke and soot. This is normal. The blackening does not affect the food. Pots are cleaned by scrubbing with ash or sand, which acts as an abrasive to remove stuck food. Meals are simple and built around staples. Porridge made from maize, millet, or sorghum. Stews made from vegetables, sometimes with meat or fish if available, flavored with salt, peppers, or local herbs. Beans or lentils cooked slowly until soft. Roots like yams or cassava boiled or roasted in the coals. Bread or flatbreads cooked on a hot stone placed in the fire. The food is plain by modern standards, but nutritious and filling. The cooking methods have been refined to make the most of limited fuel and simple ingredients. Timing matters. Cooking is done in the early morning before the heat of the day becomes unbearable, and in the evening when the day cools. Cooking midday means working in extreme heat, with a fire burning in front of you. It is avoided when possible. The rhythm of the day is built around the meals. You wake, build the fire, cook, eat. You work through the middle of the day. You return in the evening, rebuild the fire, cook again, eat, let the fire die down. This routine is constant. Smoke is a problem. Cooking indoors over an open fire fills the room with smoke. There is often no chimney. Smoke rises and escapes through gaps in the roof or through vents, but much of it lingers. Women and children, who spend the most time near the fire, breathe this smoke daily for hours. It irritates eyes, it damages lungs over time. Chronic exposure causes respiratory illness. This is understood, but there are few alternatives. Cooking must happen. Fires must burn. Some households build cooking fires outside in a sheltered area or under a lean-to. This reduces indoor smoke, but exposes the fire to wind and rain, which makes it harder to manage. Wind can blow smoke into your face, into your eyes. It can scatter embers and create a fire hazard. It can cool the fire and make cooking take longer, which wastes fuel. Rain extinguishes fires. Cooking in the rain requires shelter. A thatched roof over the cooking area, walls on the windward side to block gusts. Keeping firewood dry is critical. Wet wood does not burn. It smokes heavily and produces little heat. Firewood is stored under cover, stacked off the ground so air can circulate and keep it dry. The labor of cooking is constant and largely invisible. It is done every single day without fail. There are no days off, there is no ordering food, there is no backup plan. If you do not cook, there is no meal. This responsibility falls mostly on women. They gather the fuel, they build the fire, they prepare the food, they manage the fire to conserve fuel, they clean the pots. They do this while also caring for children, working in the fields, fetching water, and managing a household. The physical demands are immense. Children learn by helping. A young child might be tasked with keeping the fire fed. An older child learns to stir the pot, to judge when food is cooked, to manage heat. By adolescence, a girl knows how to cook a complete meal over an open fire. She knows how to gather fuel efficiently. She knows how to build a fire in wind or rain. She knows which woods burn best and how to conserve them. This education happens through daily practice. There are no classes. There is only doing repeatedly until it becomes automatic. Fuel scarcity changes behavior. In areas where wood is plentiful, cooking is less constrained. You can afford a larger fire, longer cooking times. In areas where wood is scarce, every stick matters. Meals are planned to minimize fuel use. One-pot meals are common. Everything is cooked together in a single pot, so only one fire is needed. Foods that require long cooking times are prepared less often. Quick cooking meals are favored. Fuel availability shapes what people eat. In some regions, communal cooking is practiced. Several families cook together, sharing one large fire. This reduces the total fuel needed because one fire can heat multiple pots if arranged correctly. It also turns cooking into a social activity. Women cook together, talk, share the labor. Children play nearby. This is more than efficiency. It is community, but it requires proximity, cooperation, and coordination. There are rituals around fire. Fire is not just functional. It is symbolic. It provides light, warmth, protection from animals. It is the center of the home. In many cultures, the hearth fire is kept burning continuously, sometimes for years. Letting the fire go out completely is avoided if possible. Coals are preserved overnight, buried in ash to keep them alive until morning. Restarting a fire from scratch is more work than keeping coals alive. If coals die, fire must be made again, either with matches if available, or by friction using a fire drill or bow, or by striking flint against steel. These methods take time and skill. Fire making without matches is a skill that has faded in some places and persists in others. A fire drill is a stick rotated rapidly against a wooden base until friction generates enough heat to ignite tinder. It requires the right wood, dry tinder, and sustained effort. Bow drills make this easier by using a bow to spin the drill stick faster. Flint and steel produce sparks that ignite charred cloth or dried fungus. These methods work, but they are labor-intensive. Matches and lighters, where available, have replaced them. But in remote areas, or when matches run out, the old methods are still known and still used. Cooking technology has changed slowly. Metal pots became more common as trade brought them into regions where only clay was used before. Some areas now have access to small portable stoves that burn kerosene or charcoal more efficiently than open fires. Improved cook stoves, designed to use less fuel and produce less smoke, have been introduced in some communities. These are better for health and for conserving resources, but they require investment. Many families still use the methods their grandmothers used because they are free and because the knowledge is already there. What has not changed is the fundamental reality. Cooking requires fuel. Fuel requires labor to gather or money to buy. Fire requires skill to build and manage. The work is constant. It is physically demanding. It is essential. There is no alternative. You cook or you do not eat. The efficiency that has been developed over generations is remarkable. The ability to cook a meal for a family using a handful of sticks, the knowledge of exactly how much fuel you need and how to stretch it, the skill to manage a fire in wind, rain, or drought, the improvisation when fuel is scarce and you have to make do with less. This is not celebrated. It is simply done. It is survival, and it is exhausting. Hours spent gathering wood, hours spent tending fire, hours spent cooking, day after day, year after year. The toll on the body is real. Carrying heavy loads of firewood damages backs and necks. Breathing smoke damages lungs. Burns from fire are common. Accidents happen. Children fall into fires. Pots tip and spill boiling water. These are accepted risks because there is no way to avoid them entirely while still cooking. Yet people cook. Every day they cook. They feed their families. They make something edible from raw ingredients and fire. They do this under conditions that would defeat someone who has only ever turned a knob on a stove. They do it with skill, with patience, with the knowledge that this is what must be done. There is no romance in it. It is hard work. It is necessary work. It is work that enables everything else. You cannot farm if you are not fed. You cannot raise children if they are not fed. Cooking is the foundation, and in the absence of modern technology, cooking means fire. Fire means fuel. Fuel means labor. Labor means knowledge. Knowledge means survival. You watch a woman cook over an open fire, and you see not just a meal being prepared, but an entire system in action. The gathering of wood, the conservation of fuel, the management of heat, the timing of tasks, the care to avoid waste, the attention to detail. The years of practice that make it look easy when it is anything but. And you wonder how many of us could do it. How many of us could feed ourselves and others if the grid went down and there were no stores and no gas lines. Whether we would know how to build a fire that lasted, how to cook rice without burning it or wasting fuel, how to make do with less. The answer, for most of us, is no. We would not know, we have forgotten, or we never learned. But they know, they still know.